It's time to get comfy in your favorite chair and ready for another Global Winning Women live chat with myself, Alison Marlowe, and my special guest today, Joanne Reeves Baker. Now, I just want to tell you a little bit about Joanne. Joanne and I originally connected when I reached out to her, actually, and invited her to come along to our Hampshire Winning Women meetings. Oh, goodness me, can't even remember how many years ago now, but it was quite some time. And Joanne later became one of my clients, and I just found Joanne really, really fascinating. I just was very, very curious about Joanne's view of the world, and I think it would only be fair for me to say that I think it was through meeting Joanne and really getting to know her that I started to give myself permission to bring some of my beliefs and my spirituality into not only my life but into my business as well. And nowadays I just think it's just amazing because I'm really, really learning from Joanne. Now, don't you think that's really cool how, you know, we all have so much value and talent and gifts to share with the world, and, you know, what goes around comes around. I think that's absolutely amazing. So let's just do the formal bit. Let me just tell you a little bit about Joanne's background and her training before I invite her to join me. Joanne is a highly trained specialist in the field of personal transformation and really creating long-lasting and tangible newness in her clients' lives. She's an honours degree in psychology. She's a fully qualified and experienced kinesiologist. And her professional toolkit also includes hypnotherapy, NLP, and Australian bushflower remedies, which is something fabulous to work with. Now, Joanne has also created a bespoke transformation therapy. It's a revolutionary technique which really garners results quickly. Now, I know she's going to be talking about this a little bit, but it's intensive, it's gentle, and it provides a rapid transformation that goes straight to the source of her client's issues without the need for continued sessions or regression to past memory, you know, like all those talking therapies that are out there. Now, her expertise in psychology, Eastern philosophies, and alternative medicine techniques create a unique blend of neuroscience magic. So what Joanne's really doing in the world today is supporting other coaches and mentors in their own self-development. She's also the co-founder of the Advanced Transformation Academy, specializing in hypnotherapy and mentoring. So quite a big, hefty introduction there. Joanne, are you still there waiting?
I have a big, huge smile on my face.
That's you! Oh, welcome to the call, Joanne. It's so fabulous to have you here. And, you know, as I said in my little introduction, I just think it's so amazing how kind of like the cards have turned, and now you're teaching me, and I'm learning so much from you. Actually, you know, I think we always learn from our clients, but this is slightly different, I think, you know, in as much as learning not so much techniques and things like that from you, just about learning a whole new way of life and living. One of the things that I know you are an absolute expert in, what our topic is all about this evening, is self-sabotage. You know, how did you become interested in, let alone, you know, specialize in self-sabotage?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting when you look at the beginnings of stories, isn't it? And as you know, and anybody who's connected with me will know, is that I live with a chronic illness. But the interesting thing for me was that when I was first diagnosed with this illness and I was told it was incurable, at the same time it was when I first started my psychology degree. So I was in this really interesting position where modern medicine was failing me, and I was learning about the power of the brain and the power of mind and psychological theories. So it meant that in my own journey of how I was going to manage my life and how I was going to live and really, you know, survive and live to the fullest that I could, I had to start looking at the world from a completely different point of view. And what I find quite often when I start working with my clients or I'm networking with people, I can see small snippets of my story, of somewhere that I was where being ill kind of like took that small snippet, that small piece of what we're now calling sabotage, but kind of really ballooned it open so I could really see that's something I can't afford to ignore if I'm going to live healthily. And because of my psychology degree, I was like, well, why is that happening? And where is that coming from? And what is that piece connecting to?
Wow. That's really, really interesting. And, you know, I think this topic that we're bringing to the table right now is so relevant in society today. And, you know, it's just amazing that there are women out there that have really had to experience perhaps illness or something themselves to really understand what this is all about. And I think a really, really good starting place for now would probably be for me to ask you, really, what is the definition, I suppose, around self-sabotage? Really, your definition and you know, I think that's what I'm after, is your definition.
Absolutely, because my definition is almost certainly going to be different to everybody else's. You'll quite often hear people referring to an inner gremlin or an inner demon, you know, that whole somebody's shot yourself in the foot. There's that little voice that's telling you that you can't do it.
Yeah.
That is the self-sabotage. But the importance of the definition and the way that I work is that I would never call that part of yourself a demon or a gremlin.
Okay.
Because self-sabotage, completely in reverse to everything that you think is happening. You think self-sabotage is happening to stop you, to make you unhappy, to, you know, make you feel like you don't deserve something. But actually, when you unwind it and you get down to the real truth of why that behavior is happening, it's about safety and it's about protection. Because actually that little demon appeared at some point in your life when you needed to look after yourself in a different way, where you needed to react to something you didn't have any skills to cope with. And that little demon went, I need to protect you. And actually, it was an angel. So self-sabotage, when it comes up, is actually about looking at, why is my angel trying to stop me from doing this?
Wow. So I'm just thinking now, I think this is absolutely fascinating, really, really fascinating. But how do I know if I'm self-sabotaging then?
Yeah. I mean, there's always the really obvious ones, which is where you've gone round and round in a circle and you hit a wall and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here again. That's like the top line sabotage, where you only spot it afterwards. But actually, being able to spot sabotage is a lot more simpler. And it's looking out for things like, if you're saying, I don't have time to do that.
Okay.
If you are saying, I'm going to put everybody else's needs before my needs. If you know that you're not being healthy. And sometimes it's a little bit harder, but if you're just not feeling any joy, if you're just not really glad to be alive.
Okay.
And, of course, the cliched one, but if you know that you are spending so much time being busy so that you don't have time to stop and think, if you don't have time to be in your own company because you don't really like your company, that's the biggest, most sort of obvious. The self-love is always a big piece. But the little things like, you know, can I find the time for this? Because when something is really important, you'll always find the time for it.
True, yeah. And
without a doubt. But it's very, very easy when it's something that you want, when it's some sort of like, you know, heartfelt piece that you need to change. You'll be like, yeah, I want to do that, but I don't have the time. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to do the other. Self-sabotage. Alarm bells.
Wow. And I think the examples that you gave are just so pertinent to, goodness me, many of the stories that a lot of my clients, a lot of the people that I share my community, a lot of my peers talk about all the time. And, our time and our energy are massive, aren't they? They're our greatest assets, but yet we're always complaining. So I guess what I'm really realizing in this moment very much is there's an awful lot of this self-sabotage going on. Far more than probably I kind of identified. You talked a little bit before about the gremlin, the voice in your mind, and I'm particularly au fait with that, but you're kind of bringing up something much, much bigger here, in as much as, I personally, when you gave those examples, I personally really identified with the putting other people's needs before my own. I think that's a great one for women, particularly, all women, I guess, but I was going to say particularly with mums who've got children, kind of get into this habit. So gosh, need to know a lot more about this, Joanne. You need to open up and tell us a little bit more. Now, you talked about protective angels. Yeah. So we know that you're an expert in this field, and as that expert in helping people overcome this self-sabotage, how do you kind of engage this with these protective angels?
In the actual work that I do with my clients? Generally.
Share both.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing to be aware of, and especially if you already have a coaching mentoring background, it puts you in such a great position to do this. But what a lot of people will do is they will try and shout that voice down, or they'll try and ignore it.
Yeah, switch it off.
Switch it off. But if you think about, if you had a small child, maybe a toddler, 6-year-old, and they want to tell you something, and it is really, really important that you listen, and you shout them down, or you switch them off and ignore them, there's two things that's going to happen. Either they're going to shout a lot louder, or they're going to withdraw and quietly self-sabotage. Neither of those ways are ways that we would choose to work with children.
Yeah.
It's all about conversation. And it's all about acknowledgement. It's about, okay, you've got something to say. Tell me why you're saying it. What's that about?
So we're having these conversations with ourselves?
Yes, exactly. You can do it as a small exercise. Certainly for these examples where you can hear the voice. So if you can hear the voice that's saying, I'm not good enough to do that. I don't know enough. You can go, okay, why don't you think you know enough? Well, because I get laughed at if I say things. Okay, when did you get laughed at? Oh yeah, there was that time at school when the maths teacher asked me a question and I couldn't answer it.
I think we all identify with that one. Yeah, but it's so true.
Exactly. So then you can go, oh yeah, I totally remember that, and I remember how horrible it felt, and I was really embarrassed. So I understand why you're saying I shouldn't be doing this now. But, and then the but kind of will change on who you are as a person and what your skills are and what you've learned as an adult. But, it is there, then it switches from kind of trying to shut that voice down to giving that voice reassurance. Of going, actually, I really know this stuff. I really know it well. I've studied it really hard. I can totally share this information safely because I know it. So it is again, as we would with a child, it's about reassurance. It's okay. It's safe to do this.
Yeah. And what I'm really identifying here is, if we don't have the awareness that this is actually self-sabotage, it can have a huge impact on not only our life but on our business, and you can really start to see what potentially can be holding people back, because we've all got greatness within us. We've all got such, not only our talents and our skills, but we've just got so much greatness in ourselves, and it's kind of sad, isn't it, if we're going to allow this self-sabotage to stand in our way.
Especially when it can be so simple to sort it out. As simple as not ignoring it anymore. Yeah.
Would you like to enlighten us a little bit more about that?
Well, it's quite often we'll see like the excuses.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I don't have the time for this. Okay, why don't I have the time for it? So again, it's coming back to that question. If we don't say, why don't I have the time? Well, because this, and this, and this. So if those things don't happen, what's going to happen? Usually somebody will think I'm being a bad person, especially with the time one, if it's a mother or, a partner role going on where you have to be there in some way. Your identity can get squished. And then your sabotage gets tied up with your identity, and that's where you lose that power. Because instead of stepping into your power and going, you know what, I know these people love me already. They're already there for me. They're already going to want to do things that make me happy. And then I can, feed that back into the relationship at whatever level it is, whether it's business or family.
Yeah.
And suddenly that excuse doesn't make any sense anymore.
So I'm just becoming very, very curious around this, and thank you for holding the space for me to explore that as well.
Norway.
Along with our listeners. And what I'm just thinking very much here is, what's the first step really in identifying, being aware, I guess, of what we're doing, that it is actually hindering us? I mean, I don't even know if that's a question that has a one-size-fits-all answer.
I think probably, if you're listening to things like this call, something will resonate with you.
True.
So it could be like with you with the time one or the needs one. If something resonates and you get that, ooh, yeah, I do that, or the oh yeah, I've done this again. I'm at the same place again. Then it's like, okay, am I gonna ignore this, or am I just gonna go round and round in circles?
And I think that's quite often from my own personal experience, and also, and I've done a lot of personal development work over the years, but, I often find that the same issues will come up again in a different guise, but also working with my clients and just talking to friends in life in general, these thoughts are still kind of there.
Sure. I mean, this is where the work that I do goes much deeper.
Okay.
So
this is the juicy bit.
Yeah, when you're working just yourself, or you have a great coach that you can work with, you can bring that voice up. You can meet the voice. You might even find that the voice has a name, has an identity, might not even be a person. You can have great conversations. You can negotiate with the voice. The work that I do would be to go back to when that voice first got that job descriptor of guardian, angel, protector.
Right, okay.
And it's about changing that point in time in the way that memory is stored in the brain, because our mind uses the way we store memories as a template for our behaviors in the future. So when you go back and you work in that neuroscience way of resolving, of putting in a coping mechanism, of sharing some love, some nurturing, some reassurance, then that's what changes things in your behavior in the future.
So what I'm guessing is a lot of people are getting these little light bulbs going, that's what I'm not doing. That's why this issue keeps coming up all the time.
Yeah, well, the other thing about the issue coming up is that, it happens all the time in personal development work. You're like, what, this one again?
Again?
I thought I dealt with it. And again, it's because of the way we store information in our brains.
Okay.
So, for example, you've dealt with something. Let's choose speaking in public.
Okay, that's a great one.
You've dealt with a memory. You're like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened, and I was in a supermarket and I got laughed at, and I've dealt with that memory. Okay, that's brilliant. So the brain now has a new file of how to act in a crowd. The problem is that brain can also then, you'll be in a different situation. Say you're in a situation where actually your crowd has just doubled in size. You don't have the coping mechanism for that double in size because you only dealt with that one part of the memory, but that memory is stored in other places in the brain. So when new things get triggered, it's like, oh, it's back to this one. But see, it was stored in a different place and it had different instructions and different ways of coping. So it's really that although we often think of our brain as a filing cabinet, it's a lot more spider's web. There's a lot more what am I thinking of? Like those cloud bubbles where you do cloud thoughts with going off in all directions.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot more like that. So you've dealt with one stick and one bubble, but you haven't reprogrammed all the others. But what happens when you're doing it that way is, of course, each programming becomes quicker and quicker because the brain's already online with, oh, okay, I'm going to change this and shift it up and I can let go.
So this just makes so much sense why we typically, as humans, keep repeating the same patterns, behaviours, thoughts. Goodness me, it's a bit like Groundhog Day, isn't it?
Exactly. That is exactly what it is. Yeah, same story, different place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really, getting in this moment how important it is for us to have new experiences, new challenges, to do things that are out of our comfort zone, to be able to really create some neural pathways, I guess, in our brains. Oh, I think we had a little bit of a blip there on the line, but we're back now, Joanne.
Yes, we're back on form. Just for our purposes, Alison, just so we can get back in the flow, I think the last thing that I was telling you about and sharing with everybody on the call was how this is why we quite often end up going round and round in circles, because we've dealt with an issue one way, but the way that memory was stored in our brains means that it can be triggered in 101 different scenarios that we're never prepared for. And because we think that we've dealt with it, we're kind of almost sidelined when it comes up again from a different direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, have you got any kind of exercises that we could do live on this call that could really demonstrate how we can turn things around?
That would be fun.
I think it would be great fun.
And are you're happy to do a bit of role playing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's do some role playing. I'll still call you Alison.
Okay. So can I make this up completely?
Absolutely, make it up completely. You'll have a wealth of experience of the sort of sabotages that can come up. So let's think of an example that would be typical for one of your clients.
Feelings of overwhelm and too much to do, and really wanting to be successful, but never really kind of getting out of that hamster wheel. That's a biggie.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Feelings of overwhelm.